Crime Curious is a true crime podcast that takes an in-depth look into real cases through the lens of a trained investigator and former prosecutor turned judge.
If you are sensitive to expletives, anatomical descriptions, and accurate descriptions of crime scenes, this podcast may not be suitable for you.
Welcome to Crime Curious. I'm Charnell.
I'm Megan.
I'm Brainbeth Jason.
Okay, this is a Gen Pop episode.
Hello, general audience. Welcome.
Welcome again to another week of Crime Curious cases. And today's case, we have to thank listener Ellen for the recommendation.
Oh, thank you, Ellen.
I dated an Ellen.
Did you?
Yeah.
I bet
briefly.
it was this one.
I hope not. That'd be weird.
Probably not.
Probably not.
Wasn't the same one. Yeah. Once we get into the case, I'm going to give you a trigger alert, but if just in case people don't read episode descriptions, because I know for my favorite podcasts, I don't always read episode descriptions.
I just go and listen one by one,
You'll understand why she asked us to cover this, because it is a case that's been covered by plenty of other podcasts. I didn't look it up to see if like all the populars or whatnot, but sure, definitely not as well. But it's right up our line of expertise, all three of us, so just bear with it here. But that is why Ellen recommended it, and it really was a great case to keep bringing to attention. So, on a quiet street in Great Falls, Montana, there's a small house that looks like any other. Peeling paint, a worn front step, a yard that's seen better days.
That's my house.
Right? From the outside, it doesn't look like any kind of place that would change a city. But inside that house in 2011, a 2-year-old girl named October, nicknamed Toby, was living through something no child should ever experience. And on a June night, the violence that she endured finally ended her life.
Ugh, child death case.
Sorry, that's your trigger alert.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. October was a beautiful 2-year-old girl who loved playing in the snow and making cookies with her grandma. I think her name is so cool.
October and call her Toby.
Mm-hmm.
For a girl or a boy,
so
I
adorable.
Dig it. I like it.
This episode does involve the abuse and death of a young child. I will not go into graphic details, but we are going to talk about physical abuse, neglect, the system, and how it all plays out here. October Toby Perez was living with her mother, Christy Phipps, also referred to as Christy Perez. It's interchangeable when you do any sort of research on this. Her mother's boyfriend, David Wayne Hyslop, he literally has slop.
So he's a pig.
In his name.
Stoned pig.
Yes, a stoned pig. Can we just call him that? David Stoned Pig.
Sure.
Because I'm sure it is no surprise to the two of you that David is our perpetrator today.
Mother's boyfriends 90% of the time are, and for those of you that makes upset, just know that sometimes profiling is for a reason. When we have an investigation and you, a CPS and law enforcement, it's the first thing that you're supposed to go to until they rule it out.
Yep.
It's like when a woman is murdered, they look at her husband.
Yeah,
if a child's abused, they look at mom's boyfriend.
Absolutely.
And she was the living together partner. Yes,
LTPs, guys.
The LTPs. He lived there, excuse me. Christy comes home. She finds October in her bed on June 23rd, 2011, unresponsive. Her biological father, Michael Arndt, it's A-R-N-D-T.
Yeah, I think that's correct.
Yeah, but it sounds weird in a microphone.
It's a lot
of coming out.
It's a lot of consonants.
Yeah. Michael was serving in the military and deployed overseas in Afghanistan during much of this time. Family members, especially October's grandmother, April Hall, would later say that they had a sense that something was wrong, but they never saw the inside of the house where October was living. When they did see her, it was usually at the front door, handed over quickly with no invitation to come in. We've seen that time and time again, too. So much of October's life is only visible to us through court documents, news reports, and the memories of the adults who loved her. We don't have long videos or interviews or long stories about her because she was 2. What we do know is that she was a child who should have been safe and wasn't. The man at the center of this case is David Wayne Hyslop. We don't have a lot of detail about his early life from public records, but in 2011, he was 28 years old and living in Great Falls, Montana with October. According to later reporting and advocacy pieces on this case, the main floor of the house was small, around 300 square feet. And that's where David and October's mother lived. October, by the time of this case, and I'll take us all through it, but October was often kept in the basement, and it was described as a cramped dungeon-like space. I saw the photos. Any of you can research the photos if you want to. I'll talk about them a little bit later. But there was a toddler bed in the basement, which alluded to maybe that is where she spent most of her time. At that time, by the time she was 2 in June of 2011. Advocates and family members have argued that there's no way the abuse that happened in the home could have gone unnoticed by Christy, given the size and space and the severity of what was later documented. October's mother called 911 on June 23rd, 2011, and October was taken to a medical care in critical condition. Medical staff noted massive head trauma and multiple bone fractures, which prompted them to send her to Primary Children's Hospital in Salt Lake City, Utah. Court documents and news report state that she had suffered severe injuries consistent with prolonged abuse. 2 days later, after being on life support and declared brain dead, she was taken off from life support and she passed away June 25th, 2011 at 1:28 a.m. An affidavit filed by the county attorney John Parker states that an autopsy of October was performed Monday morning, and its conclusion was that October Perez had died of blunt force trauma resulting in severe swelling of the brain. The autopsy also revealed other injuries, including a spinal fracture that would have left her paralyzed. David was the one responsible for October's care that evening, and at first he told police that she had tripped and fell on the sidewalk. Then he changed his story to say that he dropped her on her head while lying her down for a nap.
So he's trying to come up with ways to be consistent with the injuries he knew he had caused.
Exactly, with the head trauma, with what he could see.
How old was Toby?
2.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
But there were injuries consistent with long-term abuse in terms of, you said there were some breaks and
yes, I'll get
evidence
into
of
it.
Abusive head trauma, yeah.
But the spinal injury that would have left her paralyzed is presumed to have happened on this day, the same time as the head trauma. Mm-hmm. David Hyslop admitted to police that he knew October was injured, but left her in her room for a, quote, a lengthy period of time, end quote. Police also cited an unnamed witness who told them that he heard what sounded like striking noises coming from the basement of the house, which was located at 1305 4th Street in Great Falls.
So someone from outside the home heard him striking this 2-year-old from a basement in their house. So this is really loud, hard assault that's taking place.
Yes, and Christy is not home at this time, because remember I said she came home to find October unresponsive in her bed, meaning October's bed, not Christy's bed. October did save other lives because they made the decision to have her be an organ donor. I wasn't going to say she was an organ donor because she had very little choice in any of the matter of what happened to her in her 2 short years, but her mother made the choice to donate her organs. Now that we have some information on how October was murdered, I'm going to get into her injuries a little bit more. And at this point, I want to talk about previous CPS and police involvement with the family.
Okay.
Because some of the injuries that were found during her autopsy were healing, obviously indicating that they happened much prior to June 23rd. According to Child and Family Services documents, 3 earlier allegations of maltreatment of October were listed, and they were unsubstantiated. And we will talk in a minute about what that means. But let me kind of help you understand. what the specific unsubstantiated mean. It does not mean that nothing took place. It does not prove innocence in relation to the allegations. What the general public is often unaware of is that decisions are made in terms of categories. In Montana, their language is different than ours in terms of categories. But the first complaint that was received approximately 8 months before, I couldn't hammer it down exactly, guys. I tried, but you do need to understand some of those documents are not public record, not FOIA-able, and what I have is from what was said during the court hearings, what came out during court, okay?
Because they were allowed to bring up the previous unsubstantiated cases because they at least had been called in.
Yes, yes. I can't stress this enough, okay? The first complaint that was called in was not about abuse. It was about living conditions. So this is considered in Michigan physical neglect.
Environmental.
Yes. These are the kind of cases that the law is not nearly as strict on as the general public would like them to be.
Right. We call these dirty house cases.
We do.
Removals almost never happen. Mm-mm. What happens is people are given an opportunity or training to fix the home to make it livable again.
It has to be
unlivable.
Like safety hazard, health hazard.
And no, not having electricity is not an indicator.
Or running water, as long as they have access.
And poverty does not equal neglect.
No, correct. No. And why is this? And it's almost like you guys stole right from my notes because I had wrote all that. No, that's
like
okay. I expected
it.
What
we
for
do.
A living, right?
This is why Ellen asked us to cover this case. Why is this true? Okay, why, Charnell? I know you're asking us all, Charnell, Megan, Jason. Why are cases like this, dirty house complaints, why is it that it has to be so bad before they will remove? The answer is because it's easily rectifiable. Placing children in care is a very traumatizing event. It's very costly, and it's reserved only for situations when children are in immediate risk of harm and there's no other options. Coming in and telling, usually what agencies do is they'll come in and say, okay, your children can't stay here. We are going to put resources in that's going to help teach you how to clean your house. And until it gets to a point where it is clean enough for these children to come back, we are actually going to put you with mom or dad, whatever, in a hotel.
Right.
In a, different organizations in your community have sometimes what, for lack of a better word, safe houses. They're temporary housing. Yes, exactly.
Or can your kids go stay with grandma for a few days?
If there's a grandma, yeah.
Yes. Is there a family member? Thank you for another excellent point, Jason, that can take the children because they can't stay here. This needs to be cleaned up.
And that's not a removal either, just to note. That's a safety plan. That's called safety planning that you guys are doing with them.
And I will throw this out. We're going to talk a lot about the child protection laws because this case, a major surrounding problem with this case is CPS and law enforcement. And so if anything that I tell you about the reality of how this case was handled, bothers you, makes you angry, what you can do is talk to your legislators about changing laws and getting CPS departments across the nation who are overworked and understaffed. The pay is shit. Okay, you're required to have a bachelor's degree, but we're not going to give you a bachelor's degree wage. So if at any point you don't like what I have to say because you believe that the laws should change, good. Get loud, get resources for your local departments to be able to fully staff their departments, to be able to comprehensively train them.
16 years ago when we started, we were making what is basically minimum wage now.
Yes, we were.
And Michigan is on the higher end of paying their workers.
Yes.
I just did the math in my head
and I hate to point this out, but sometimes you get what you pay for.
Right.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah.
It is, unfortunately.
You will get people who do their job because they love it and they felt called to it, and that's most people. But it also has one of the highest burnout rates of any social work employment that I've ever seen. Yeah.
Like 2 years is average.
And so when you don't get reimbursed while on top of it, again, you will get what you pay for in terms of sustained services.
Yes, you will. And it is not an easy, it's just like law enforcement. It's not an easy job. People don't want to see you. They don't want to talk to you. They do want to take out all their frustrations on you, though.
Yeah.
So
no, for the our higher echelon Patreons, this is what happens to your face.
the ones that can see
When
you.
the ones
You
that
wanna
can
see
see
all
this,
of these?
see this shit. This wouldn't
See
have been
these
there if I took a
wrinkles?
different job for 15
Right,
years.
right.
Oh, you're still gonna lose collagen, Jason. But yeah, I get it. It's the stress that it takes on you physically that we wear on our faces.
So this first case was for physical neglect. It was a dirty home complaint. Social workers checked the home. They did deem that it was safe, and they closed the case according to the documents. I saw photos of what the home looked like at the time of her death. I'm going to tell you, the upstairs, you guys, that would not have rose to the level of a removal.
Okay. Would it be messy for an average person?
It would be for the average person of how you would want to live, sure. Was there shit all over the countertops? Absolutely. Dirty dishes? Yeah. Was there, piles of clothes? And yes, it was a completely unkept house. But was there cockroaches everywhere and poop smeared on the walls?
Right.
No.
Seen that.
Sure have.
Many times.
Right. So the basement where her little toddler bed was, it was cramped. It was full of, from what I could see, it was just a lot of clothes. And there was, the washer and dryer was like right by the head of her bed. So there's a bunch of paraphernalia of dishwasher detergent, old bottles and crap like that,
Just messy.
It was.
Messy.
It was completely unkept. I'm sure there was bags of garbage and stuff like that. That's the normal. But this is what is going to make people uncomfortable. That doesn't rise to the level of removal.
Right.
That rises to the level of, hey, you've got to get this cleaned up. But when this first complaint came in, she was not in that toddler bed. Remember, the pictures I saw were from 8 to 9 months later, when she was still technically, she's like a year and a half, okay? She was in a crib. She didn't live in the basement at that point in time, as some of the notes indicated that there was a crib upstairs. So what I saw upstairs at that time, no, it wouldn't have resulted in a removal.
No, but it's the ick factor of having a 2-year-old in a toddler bed in a basement too, right? Because
Yes.
she had to pad her little tiny
But
feet
remember,
up those
she
steps.
wasn't a toddler. No. At the time of this first complaint, she was not. That wasn't her age.
Okay.
Nope, she wasn't
She was a
living in
year
the
and a half.
basement. Yep,
Yeah, if
she
that.
wasn't in the basement at that time.
So they were just keeping a toddler bed down there. She wasn't sleeping in it.
At the time of her death, 9 months later, she was.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm taking you through each of the CPS complaints that came out in court. So they get this unsanitary home complaint. They closed it. Also, keep in mind too, she's so young. This happens a lot in first complaints, like that we're gonna come in, tell you to clean some things up, and then close it. We don't know how it looked at the time that CPS was there. So that's the other thing we need to consider. And by the time of her death, as I said, she was a toddler. Things may have looked a little bit different. When CPS was first called, and her being in that crib, it's very likely that the crib was on the main floor of this very small home. And I know that in another complaint, they mention the crib. So that's why I'm saying they know they saw the crib. And I just also wasn't there. So maybe this place was a total shithole and she should have been removed and wasn't. I just know as a former CPS worker, the law is a state minimum standard for living conditions, and it is exceedingly rare for removals to happen based only on that. October's paternal grandmother, April Hall, I mentioned her earlier. She has been the best advocate for October while she was alive and in her death. Her position was terrible because her son was away in Afghanistan, so she could only see October when Christy would allow. Grandparents don't have rights in Michigan, and it sounded like it was the same in Montana as well.
Not unless the custodial parent, like the dad, not unless he had passed away. So if you have a parent die, then a grandparent can get some type of visitation with their grandchild.
Right.
And you don't have to deal with that in most cases because most parents of children don't exclude grandparents from their children's lives unless they're a safety issue.
Mm-hmm.
So
If there's no custody order
but
to
if
begin
he's
with.
right, and if he's alive and just deployed and this isn't a custody issue, then no, they don't have any right to see her unless she allows it, unless mom allows it.
Well, and I think that mom was. April 1st called CPS in late January 2011 when she noticed bruises on October's body that seemed to come and go.
This was while her son was deployed, though?
It was.
Ooh.
Yes. He is deployed through this whole thing. Just know that Michael, her biological dad, is deployed through this entire case.
Okay, so he never got to see any evidence that his child was being abused by this
No,
LTP.
But he does come into play. But just
Okay.
know he's not here. He is in Afghanistan. Now, what April said she couldn't know for sure was what the cause of the injuries were, but it was unsettling for her, so she made a complaint. This was a quote from her. She said, "It was just getting pretty obvious that there were things and it wasn't natural. A child to constantly have bruises on them like that." While that was being investigated, okay, so that complaint that April put in end of January there, April picked October up in early February, and October wouldn't stop crying. She took her, so April decides to take her to the ER, and x-rays revealed a fracture to October's left forearm, plus a healed fracture to her right forearm that an orthopedic surgeon determined to be as old as 6 weeks. So police get involved in this investigation with CPS, as is standard practice. But here's the problem, and this is the part that's going to also piss people off and make them feel some sort of way, and I totally get it, but I'm just trying to explain the law to you. It was determined by physicians that October's buckle fracture to her left arm was not caused by a grab or a twist. So they believe it was caused by accident.
Isn't that kind of the only way you can cause that?
I have comments.
Remember, guys, like a spiral fracture, that's going to show the grab or twist.
Right.
This is not a spiral fracture.
What you said? Buckle?
It's a bucket.
a bucket handle.
No, a buckle fracture.
Right.
Buckle. Okay.
Yes.
Then maybe
So-
I'm confusing it with something.
Yeah,
else.
so you can get a buckle fracture from, like, I think we've had some playground accidents with
We see them all the time in childcare.
right, and they're not automatically indicative of child abuse.
Right.
You can rule out child abuse on them. The spiral fractures, those are on non-mobile children or
Yes.
young children, are ones that are automatically like child abuse is your first indicator.
Correct.
But buckles, you need an expert to rule it out, really.
And this was not a spiral, okay? It was a buckle, and so the physicians determined that it was caused by an accident. But really what it means, guys, is that, and remember, the way that the bones break are seen on the image, right? So the spiral fracture, as Megan had said, and I put in my notes, so I'll just repeat it, it's almost always indicative in small children to be abusive. But they didn't have this in October's case. So what this means is that a medical professional was not able to conclusively determine the cause of the injury,
Right.
because she's a walking toddler and falls can happen, that it was abusive in nature. So we have to consider the responsibility placed on child abuse medical experts. They do not want to make an inaccurate determination of abuse, just as they don't want to miss the abuse either.
Well, and let's be clear about why. Because if you prosecute somebody or do a case on somebody and you have a buckle fracture and then you've done a removal and the prosecutor has that expert witness testify, but the defense is going to say, is it possible that this was caused by an accident? Yep. They're going to testify honestly and say, yes, in these type of situations with these type of fractures, you could obtain this even if you're a semi-mobile child.
Yep.
So it's not a really highly prosecutable case or a removable case if you're talking about a neglect and abuse.
Right. And also, we have to keep in mind, too, without truthful information to back up the medical tests, the evidence, with the evidence, so a medical expert's not going to say either that this is conclusively abuse.
No.
And that's the other problem. We don't have adults here that are being honest at all, and we don't have conclusive medical evidence. So that's convoluting it as well. Without that medical expert evidence saying conclusively that it was abuse, the police had no case, so they had to close their investigation, which is standard. That is normal. None of you guys are going to like that.
No, you don't
I
have
saw
to.
the comments online. I totally understand as a human where you're coming from, But I want you to understand from the law, the point of the law, where they can't keep the case open.
Right. They could choose to proceed on a probable cause finding for either neglect and abuse or a criminal case, but it's not going to make it past a preliminary examination on a criminal case,
Right.
and it's probably not going to make it past an adjudication phase on a neglect and abuse case.
Right.
If there's other possible explanation, and you've explained to us before, both you and Jason, that you guys are supposed to be, as investigators, ruling out possibilities, right? You're not on a witch
Alternative
hunt.
hypothesis.
Yeah, you're not on a witch hunt. You have to take every potential alternative hypothesis and run it through.
Yep.
And that doesn't mean that people and workers and people, legit police officers who are doing a good job, don't get it wrong because they don't have all the information.
Right. And here's where we have some good news. So yes, law enforcement had to bow out at this point in time. CPS doesn't. In every investigation, CPS caseworkers are required to make a decision on the merit of the initial allegation, the initial report of maltreatment, as well as the child's current safety. Although the report of abuse was found to be unsubstantiated, meaning they could not conclusively prove it, doesn't mean it didn't happen. It's just saying they did not have the evidence to be able to conclusively say, so they have to mark it as unsubstantiated because they didn't have the medical expert evidence of child abuse. And also keep in mind, they can't claim that they know better and call it child abuse. When you don't have, as a CPS worker, when you don't have that medical expertise to back you up, you are nothing.
Oh, no,
You're
correct.
not an expert.
Correct. It's not going to meet muster in court if you, just as a worker, disagree with the medical examiner or disagree with the doctor. I mean, it's not going to happen.
It happened to me many times. In my current role as a manager over an entire region of people who do investigations, there are plenty of times where my staff and I do not agree. But what that said, then you have to find more evidence, because you cannot make legal determinations without expert evidence.
So
in social work.
Right.
But what the caseworker can do and did do in this situation, they didn't remove October, okay, because they didn't have the evidence to support it. But they did have enough to do what we call in Michigan open and ongoing case.
Yes.
Okay. Which means we aren't just going to close this case and walk away like they did with the dirty house complaint, which was very common.
Can I ask a question for the public?
Yes.
Would you consider that then open and ongoing, that they would have actually opened the case based off of like a fail to protect or fail to supervise?
I can tell you exactly what they did.
Okay.
Although they could not determine that there was abuse, they have to categorize this as unsubstantiated, but they did place her in a category. Montana has different categories. They placed her in a category of impending danger, which is worse than safe, which is one of their categories, but not as severe as present danger, which is the worst category, and that's what gets a removal to happen, okay? So they're midline. There's impending danger here, so we are going to open a case. We're going to monitor it. We're going to offer services.
We don't have enough to remove, but
Yep.
we're going to make the parents comply.
Yes. So this tells me the caseworkers that worked this,
They did their job?
yes, and they also probably had reason to believe that there's suspicion that mom and living together partner were lying, and that just because the medical experts weren't willing to put their neck on the line and say this was abuse, they had concern that maybe there was something abusive happening.
Or at least nobody's watching this 1.5-year-old who was able to sustain a buckle fracture.
Right. And then the old injury that went unnoticed to her wrist, right? Which that does happen. The injuries at joints, like, you know, your elbow, the nursemaid's elbow, the wrist.
Wrist and forearm.
That's so common in developing children to happen completely by accident. Like, as a parent, just so you know, you can accidentally grab your child's arm just a little
pull it out of socket?
You can.
I
Not
did that
even just playing with your kids.
Right.
Yep.
I did that to my sister, not as a parent, because she was one of those toddlers
telling me
that would
that.
always climb on things, and she was on a 3-foot tall dresser, and she was going to jump off it because she thought she could fly. So I grabbed a hold of her hand. I was 18 months older than her. I probably was only 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And when I held her hand as she jumped, I pulled her arm out of the socket.
Yep.
So she had to go go to the hospital so the pediatrician could put it back in place.
Yep. We see those reports all the time in the line of work that Jason and I do. So here we are at this point. They have a case which in Michigan requires ongoing visits to the home to verify the well-being of the child and provide services. Here is another thing none of you are going to like. And a lot of the general public doesn't know. I know, but a lot of the general public doesn't know this either. Without a court order, all of these things that they are offering this family are voluntary, you guys. The family does not have to participate in that.
Now, let's talk about what can happen, though. If they aren't participating and they believe that the safety issue is increasing by virtue of them not participating, they could petition for a removal from the court. But
or even to make them have to participate in the services.
Or get an order to participate in services. That was correct.
Yep. So, I think you can tell that this case came with super, super heavy criticism of Montana's social services. And believe me, working in the system, yes, there needs to be changes. But that has to happen at the highest level of the law. CPS cannot force people to participate even with an investigation. Yes, someone could require CPS to get a court order to enter their home and to interview them or see their children. They can't, however, stop CPS from seeing the children at school if it's a school-age child.
Correct.
But I had plenty of people deny me access to their child, and then I just have to wait and go to school, and the school cannot deny access to CPS. And why is that, guys? Because it's called the Child Protection Law, not the Parent Protection Law.
Right.
So we do have to be able to verify the well-being of children, and the law allows us to do that.
So there's federal rules and laws there too, but each state also has their own CPL, and that's how you're able to have different phases.
She means Child Protection Law.
Right? Sorry, not a concealed pistol license either. So, right, Child Protection Law. And again, every state's different or unique. And so we've criticized workers or law enforcement who we don't think did a good job or we don't think followed policy. What the uprising is going to be with the community here is like, how did this happen? Why didn't they remove whatever? Well, they followed policy, and if you're unhappy with what that was, you have to go to a legislative level and ask for the laws to be changed.
Yep.
So that policy can be changed so that workers have a different set of rules that they can operate under.
Yep.
Because right now, I have not heard you tell me anything so far that I think is any type of neglect on the part of the CPS.
Well, once again, it's like you're stealing from my notes, even though you can't see them. Because
I'm not.
No, I literally I wrote that I'm just asking that we educate ourselves as a collective before we throw workers to the wolves. Again, I wasn't there.
There's bad workers.
Yeah, I wasn't there. So perhaps there was reason to look and make sure that they're following policy and law. You know, in our current job, Jason does investigations. What I do is make sure that Jason followed the policy and law in those investigations. We both have to sign those reports. I don't sign off on those until I know that he has done everything within the policy and law of the state of Michigan, and he doesn't conclude an investigation until he knows that he's done it, right?
Yes.
And so it's not just it's not just one person that's seeing this, and that's what the point that I wanted to make. There are levels of management that also see and make sure that policy and law was followed, and that you get the information that you get, right?
Oh, what a really good point. There are CPS, these workers, they had supervisors.
Yeah, each case is, there's not one person responsible for that case.
No, exactly.
There's multiple people who handle everything. Like,
Yep.
So
before they close it out,
and not only that,
looked at me more.
Like for us, Jay, I assign you an investigation. You and I talk about it before you go out. Yeah. We talk about it when you're still in the fields. Sometimes I go with you, and then other times, and that's
how it was when I was doing CPS.
Yes, we have multiple points of contact. About a singular case, right?
And it's with their manager, supervisor, whomever, and it's should be.
Yes.
Like frequent updating and discussions about what's going on and what we can do or what we can't do and what we should do.
Right. And I don't know how things were working in Montana at the time or what their relationship was with their attorney. At the time that you guys were doing CPS cases here in Michigan, each county can decide to utilize who they want as a contract prosecutor, but you guys were using the county prosecutor's office, and that's where we met and where I came in. So CPS or the supervisor for CPS, typically you guys yourselves, but sometimes supervisors, would contact the prosecutor who did those cases and would say, here's what I have. Do you think we have enough to request a removal? Do you think we have enough to petition for jurisdiction, but not an actual removal where the court can order things? I don't know if that was happening there, but it's not necessarily policy. You guys just had another avenue in terms of making a request of your counsel.
Right. Right.
Who
Exactly.
presumably would also hold some accountability on like, oh, yeah, I told him not to.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So I was always careful on those cases where if something looked like a duck, quacked like a duck, I'd have you file a petition.
Yep.
And then let the court decide.
Well, in our current role, we don't do CPS anymore, but we do childcare licensing. So we investigate licensed childcares. And we confer with our lawyer all the time on things that we might be unsure about. So it does mimic even different state departments still, kind of follow this systematic process, right?
Yeah.
And every state is going to have that. I mean, I don't want to pretend like I know Montana's, but a lot of them, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. A lot of them follow very closely the same systematic process. So just things that I wanted to throw out there, that it's not just one person that's going rogue making these decisions or trying to cover anything up. These are multiple people that would have been conferred about this and made decisions.
It's just hard because, there's people out there listening that say, but for different decisions made, right? She might still be here.
Yes.
But what if CPS didn't follow policy and decided to do a removal instead? And what if they got lucky and got a judge that could have seen the future and did the removal?
Right.
There's just so many what ifs in these cases.
It's funny that you say that. I even put in my notes about caseworkers cannot predict the future, nor can we make decisions based on our feelings.
Right.
Of what we think will happen in the future, even with our decades of experience. Sometimes, you guys, I've gotten to a point where I can tell you exactly the script, what's going to happen from one investigation to the next, but the law doesn't require me to be able to take action until we have the evidence to support it.
Because your feelings aren't admissible in court.
No.
The facts are.
No matter how clairvoyant I am,
I know
they won't accept it.
But it's true.
Yep.
You guys can say, well, if these people would have just filed this because they saw that things weren't going well, think about how that would come out in court, and I can tell you it wouldn't. There would be an objection immediately on something like that.
Yep.
And I'm also going to say that there's not sometimes workers out there, as we're all well aware, and law enforcement, who just simply don't follow policy or who fuck up.
Yes, exactly. I will have a little bit to say about their Department of Family Services afterwards. But so here we are. We now have an open case. And about 2 months later, there was another complaint called. Because remember, I told you there was at least 3 that were made. So this third one, CPS was called to investigate an abuse allegation from October's 5-year-old half-brother. And now he's a minor, so we're not naming him. But she had a half-brother. This child told a Head Start teacher that he was being abused. And so the Head Start teacher actually made the report to Child and Family Services. And just so you know, who makes reports to any sort of, for CPS, for foster care, for child care licensing, it's all anonymous. It's illegal. It came out in court. The reason that I said it now is because this was a part of the court records.
Which means...
And she testified.
Don't be afraid to report child abuse and neglect. It is anonymous, but you do have to understand that at some point, a judge, we may order that CPS disclose that source, and they may have to testify. That could happen. It's just rare.
Yes, and the reason that I was willing to say it in this situation...
is because it came out in court.
Well, not only that, but being a Head Start teacher, she's a mandated reporter.
Right.
You're not allowed to remain anonymous
if you're
when you're a mandated reporter. You have to put your first name.
And you guys, that's because it is literally in Michigan a misdemeanor to fail to report a report of neglect or abuse if you're a mandatory reporter.
And
then
it's
you
a
could also lose your job.
$250,000 fine, by the way.
Right.
So no one wants that noise. Okay. So
because most of them are teachers and don't make that much money.
Right. At all, for sure. None of them.
Most mandated
make
reporters
that.
can't afford that fine.
No, exactly.
Unless you're a doctor.
Yep,
Right.
that's so true.
Because you can go to Burger King and work for $20 an hour, and new workers start at $25.
Right.
Yeah.
With a bachelor's
true.
degree in student loans.
I know. I know. You have to have a master's degree to do Jay and I's job.
Correct.
And I noticed that to be in management at Hobby Lobby, I'm like, that's only like $40,000 off of what I make.
Hobby Lobby it is with less
Right.
stress.
I was like, man, that'd be way less stress.
And free shit.
So what you're
Yes.
saying
Well,
is
discount.
we're all going to go work at the Hobby
I think I
Lobby.
want to work. And you give Sundays off for sure. So
Oh, for sure.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh gosh. Anyway, this complaint that was made by the Head Start teacher, CPS did come. There were no bruises. They interviewed him. He did not disclose anything. And so again, this is another unsubstantiated. Doesn't mean it didn't happen. It just means they didn't have the evidence to be able to substantiate it, to say these allegations are true.
Now, let me
And they do
interject.
still have the open case.
Correct. So I was going to say, let me interject that if they did substantiate that there was enough for abuse on him and he was in the same home, at least in Michigan, and I'm assuming all states are the same, you can use evidence of how one child is treated to show evidence of how another child could be treated,
Yep.
which is where the future, foreseeing the future, is legally admissible in
Yep.
court.
Yep. In this particular case, though, her half-brother ends up, unrelated to these allegations, he ends up going and living with his father in Phoenix on April 9th.
Well, he
It's
got to leave the situation.
He did. It's not because CPS ordered it. It was a family decision at that time. So, and it really was like right after they interviewed him and whatnot. And so maybe the dad even interjected and was like, I'm uncomfortable with this. I know you have an open CPS case. So he's coming to live with me.
They changed custody, and the custody side is often handled differently than the CPS side when you're
Or-
dealing with parents.
Or mom knew that the allegations were true and removed what she considered the source of the problem.
Yes, very possible. Because
Right.
perhaps
He
the
told-
5-year-old, and
She said, if he sticks around, we're going to get caught, or my boyfriend's going to get caught smacking.
correct, because he is verbal. I put that in my notes, Jay. Yes. And actually what I put is, at this point in the case, I want us to consider something that all media outlets and coverage of this case have missed. Now that October's 5-year-old, meaning verbal, half-brother is out of the home, abuse likely increased of October.
Right.
Him going to live with his father is a risk factor to this case, in my opinion, that no one else has really seemed to connect.
Can I ask with the boy who's a minor, so we don't know his
Right.
name, were the allegations of abuse with mom and her LTP?
I don't know this.
So we don't
it was
know any of
only
that.
allegations of abuse. That's all it kept being referred
We don't know
to
who
as.
the alleged perpetrator
No.
was in this case or even what household.
No, nope.
So that's hard because we don't have a legal right to know any of that. And he went to live with dad, so we can presume it's because something happened in the home. But hell, this could have been a completely non-related, another caregiver, a neighbor.
Yeah.
I mean, we have no idea of knowing at this
Right.
point.
I am going to guess, since it was a part of the court case, that it was likely against David because he's the one that goes to court here.
Okay.
So
And if it was allowed to come in or be mentioned, you're
Yep,
right. We can
so-
speculate pretty.
that's how I'm going to make those
Okay.
connections. Yes, exactly, Megan.
I'll take it.
Yep. As part of the
I'll allow it.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor.
Yeah, sustained. Go ahead.
Can you just start? I want you to do that all episodes now. Just talk in the legal. Sustained. Objection.
Right. Or I'm overruling my own objection.
Yes. So the caseworker who visited the home noted bruises on. Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped ahead in my notes, you guys. Forgive me. As part of the ongoing CPS case, a worker does come later in the month of October. So the half-brother is already gone. And this caseworker does make note that October had bruises on her forehead and on her cheeks, and that some of her teeth were falling out.
Oh, no.
The caseworker who visited the home noted bruises.
Charnell, you can't see Jason's face twitching right now.
I can. I really can. Uh-huh. Okay. The caseworker who visited the home noted the bruises on on October's head, as they were supposed to, but was told by someone whose name was redacted from the report. So that's not mom or dad, you guys.
Right.
That those bruises were from October running into a countertop, which she was the right height. Baby teeth can fall out at 2 years old, and yes, they can rot and fall out in situations where parents are not brushing their children's teeth.
I'm more
I hate
interested
to tell you that.
Okay, I'm more interested in, or when you put Mountain Dew in your baby's bottle.
Yep.
Or
I'm not brushing your baby's teeth
right.
at all.
I'm more concerned about the placement of bruises. I made this motion for those of you who can see, but like
it was
where you would take
one on the forehead and one on the cheek.
Okay, so it's
Which,
not like a grab.
No.
And it
but
is
again,
where the
I've
teeth were
had
falling out.
toddlers that have ended up with bruises, a black eye.
Yeah, and injuries to a toddler's forehead is not
No.
it happens a
indicative of
lot.
abuse because they run
No.
into shit and
Well,
bump
have
into
you
shit
seen a
and they-
toddler? Look how they're built.
Yes,
Their heads
they're-
are
right.
40% of their body
But-
at that
It's
point.
like me walking tipsy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Right.
yeah, if you're that worker who's
I
concerned in the
know.
first place,
But
and
it's all adding up. It's that's where
there's
the
a
public
lot of there's a
is
lot of red
uncomfortable.
flags.
Because it's just this is a very accident prone
But
family.
what makes me this is the part. This person's name was redacted from the report. So this is another eyewitness in the home who saw her allegedly running into the countertop. So we either have multiple people hiding the abuse,
Yes.
or in this situation, you guys, she really was a toddler and got a
Right. Well,
you know,
kids who are abused have accidents too at the same time.
they do. That's what's really horrible. Absolutely. They still have those developmental things that all children go through. And then on top of it are also being abused. But in hindsight, of course, we
Can
look
I
at all
ask a
this.
question that may not make them look great?
Of course. Because, I mean, I'm not saying I'm
live
on
in
their
Montana.
side or anything, guys. I wasn't there.
I wish that they would have, if they didn't, required them to go do a medical at this point. Okay, it was an accident, but how about we do a medical and we go ahead and do an x-ray and an MRI, because we've had multiple complaints now in this house. So yes, the parents can refuse to do that, but then you could potentially go get a court order. If I was your prosecutor and you guys called me and said, this is what's going on, I don't even know if I can open up, I'd be like, tell the parents to go take that child to the doctor and see if they'll order an x-ray. And if they refuse, you bring it back to me and let me see what I can do in terms of a court order.
And I don't know at this point in time if they did anything like that. I only know that they continue to make the recommendation after this investigation of her being in impending danger. They're going to continue to keep the case open. They're going to continue to request services. I don't know if Mom and David were willing to participate in any of the preventative services that I'm sure Montana was offering them. And just so you know, historically speaking, parents like this, moms and living together partners like this, they will drag their feet and come up with all kinds of excuses as to why they cannot participate in a freaking service, right down to, I don't have transportation. Oh, really? Well, a worker will actually come and pick you up. Oh, no, you know what? I actually don't have, I got to go look for a job. I've got to do this. I mean, there are a plethora of excuses. And then even if they do decide to commit the morning of, then it's going to be, I've been vomiting all night. I've got diarrhea. I can't.
Well, and then if there are, let's hypothetically say that there were some sort of community services given to the family, whether they're going to the home and meeting with the parents, or seeing the home, or seeing that child in the home, it might be once a week for an hour.
Maybe.
So, I mean, just being optimistic and saying they were doing it.
I'm going to tell you, from the
minimum.
photos that I saw,
Probably not.
I don't think they were participating in services.
Right. And again, and I don't know what Montana's availability and where, I don't know what shit about Montana. But
Yeah, right.
I can find it on a map.
I'm
but-
just... Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, I mean, if they, in that caseworker who has their ongoing case, at most, they might be going to that house twice a month. Maybe once a week at the most.
Maybe.
And
Yeah.
For 20 minutes.
But that's what they're
Yeah.
finding, the 1 or 2 times that they go a month. It's
right. And
concerning.
oh, absolutely. I'm just saying, but they're not like there's constant eyes on this child.
No, there's not. But I also want to point out something important here, too, and that's that not to be critical of the workers, because I think that they probably were following policy at this point still. But at some point, you could request a petition for jurisdiction or removal. And one of the things that you guys are aware of, before I say I was still the referee in these cases that would be doing the removal, I would have to look at if there were reasonable efforts made to prevent removal of a child from a family. And the efforts at this point are CPS, ongoing, services offered. They haven't been compliant with services. There's been one child that had an alleged injury that no longer lives in the home, this being a verbal child. We also have a child who continues to have accidents, so these unsubstantiated. Parents have refused refuse to take child to the ER if they were told that
Yeah,
they needed
if,
to do
if
to.
that's what happened.
Right?
Yeah.
And if all of those things happened how I wish they would have, and I don't know for sure if they did, then I think that there would have been enough to make the request of the court. And guys, at least make the court be the bad guy here, which I had to be multiple times.
Yes, that was my
right?
favorite thing to do as a CPS worker was make
I'm
Megan the bad guy.
I'm bringing it to you as a referee. That's when I was a prosecutor. I wasn't the bad guy, but as with a referee who's kind of quasi-judicial before I was elected to this position, you made those decisions all the time. Is there enough for removal? And there were a lot of nights that were hard to sleep if I had said no for some reason, right? Like, no, I don't think there's enough. But
I think I even put that in here that keep in mind CPS and law enforcement. CPS, what we do or what we did, I mean, we're not CPS now, but even in our current role with the state of what we do, we can only make recommendations to the court.
Yeah.
Right.
It is judges like Megan who have to make the hard decisions.
Right.
So when somebody's like, oh, well, CPS came in and removed. Actually, CPS made a recommendation to a judge. A judge signed the order.
The court removes.
Yes, the court is the one that does
Let's
that.
make this very clear. Yeah, you made this clear, but say it again. CPS in every single state, in every single territory in the U.S. has no right to legally remove a child.
Right.
If CPS is removing your child, they're only carrying out the physical act pursuant to an order.
Yep.
The only other people in the entire world that can remove a child are police, law enforcement, and only briefly and only in enough time to go get a court order, but they can take a child into what's called protective custody. Yep. CPS can't even take children into protective custody. They have to call law enforcement or go get a petition.
Yep.
So never in the history of ever does CPS legally remove your children. The only way they're legally removing your children.
Back in the 80s in Michigan, they could.
They might have. That's what I was
that changed
now.
Yeah. But nope,
without a court order.
Without a court order.
It's always
exactly.
the court that does it.
Yep. And so the reason I had put that in these notes is to your point. At this point in time, now, this third investigation, which was initiated by the ongoing worker who showed up for a unannounced visit and saw these bruises, and they opened the investigation. I agree 100% with you. As a worker at this point in time, I would like to think that I would have been petitioning or asking. But we also don't know the circumstances of maybe they were cooperating with some sort of services. They might not have been focusing on cleaning the house.
What if they wanted the petition and their supervisor said, no, there's not enough?
Yeah.
Exactly. We don't know what they might have been asked for because that's just it. Like Jason can't come to me and say, I want to revoke this person's license.
Oh, okay. Have a good day.
Right.
You have all the power.
He's not going to call me and be like, so just so you know, I just revoked this person's license today.
I should have told you about that.
Right. I'm like, nope. That requires my approval as well. And then farther up as well, and the judge. And so... we also don't know those intricate policy nuances that were happening, but I agree with you just at the surface of what we're seeing, and then it's even more removed for the media and the general public, right? When they're reading these reports, they're like, oh my gosh, there is actually a headline, you guys, that said that a child was killed by CPS. That is what the headline read.
In this case?
In October's case, child killed by CPS.
Well, that seems a little misleading.
Oh, it 100% was.
What they probably meant to say is that CPS neglected to do something that ultimately led to a child's death, even though clearly they didn't do anything.
Again, things I don't know about Montana. My envisionment is I know there's a lot of mountains.
And there's a lot of
flatlands.
Mm-hmm.
And I could be horribly wrong, but in my head, I feel like the people of Montana are either very wealthy or very poor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the haves and have-nots.
There's not a lot of in between there.
Yeah.
I could be completely wrong. I've never been there.
Yeah,
we're in Great Falls for this one. But.
There's a middle class now because there are some cities that are bigger there. But think about Montana's two biggest cities is like 80 to 90% of their entire population. They're all just around the area. Right. So yeah, you're dealing with
everything else is very, very rural, like the definition of rural.
And I think that the reason I got disgruntled by the headline that was very misleading and said that CPS killed a child was that we keep forgetting as a general a general collective in this case, it feels like when you read about it that people forget to place the real blame where it belongs
on the
here.
perpetrator that killed a little girl,
And how about on Christy's on October's mother, Christy,
who failed to protect,
who completely failed to protect? Yes. So June 3rd, 2011, I'm leading up to her death was June 23rd. Well, technically the 25th when they took her off life support, but the incident happened on the 23rd. On June 3rd, 2011, October's biological father, Michael, retained Great Falls attorney David Dennis, not to be confused with the perpetrator David here, in an effort.
David Slop Pig.
Yes, that's right. Hyslop. David Dennis, in an effort to gain custody of his daughter because he felt she was in danger. The attorney Dennis wrote a letter that was dated June 3rd to October Perez's caseworker expressing his concern about the division's visit to their home, okay?
Good.
And this is the quote. It is my understanding that you are conducting home visits and monitoring October's care. If this is the case, I'm at a loss to understand how the department can justify subjecting October to further injury.
Okay.
Toward the end of the letter, the lawyer wrote, she is suffering daily and in danger of serious injury, end quote.
Okay. I have no reason to disagree with that. And my only question would be why they didn't implement a custody action, because you don't have to wait for CPS. If you want to make a custodial change, you can go to the circuit court in ours and ask for a change in custody. And that man in the military has rights, and he could have asked that the child custody be granted to his parents with supervised visitation by mom only.
Right, in his absence.
I appreciate that attorney's sentiment, and I actually agree. I think I've made that pretty clear that I have those concerns as well. But there was an option here.
Yes.
There always is an option with custody.
Yep. It was only 20 days later when April Hall, remember that is Michael, her biological father's mother.
Mom.
So it's October's
Paternal.
paternal grandmother. April Hall, she was actually on a trip to New York when she got the call that October was in the hospital and was unlikely to survive.
You poor lady. I'm so
I
sorry.
know. Court documents state that David Hyslop's own children were removed from his care in 2003. So
Well,
this is
that
8
didn't
years.
The reason that we're having small panic attacks now is this is adding more reason to have requested adjudication or a removal.
Hold on. It was 8 years earlier when he lived in Oklahoma after he was arrested for a felony drug charge. Okay. So it was not for abuse.
I know.
Drug charges are handled very differently. I
They
warned you
are.
guys that you weren't going to like the law. David Hyslop.
As we've been sitting explaining it this whole time. But
And not
now
to
it's
say we like it either.
Not
It's just
at
what we have to
all.
operate within it.
Not at all.
It's awful. David Hyslop lived in Montana since November 2010. So we don't have information of whether or not Christy knew before moving David in. I don't think it would have made a difference to her. Something
not.
tells me
Not
that
with-
she's not
She
real
was lonely.
choosy.
No, and not with
But-
felony drugs. Look at how many moms we have who do love their children
Yes.
very much, but still make terrible choices in partners.
Yep.
For what a number of different reasons, maybe even going back to their own trauma.
And you guys, having a felony drug charge does not mean that you're automatically going to abuse your children or
true.
your living together partner's children.
It's not an automatic removal either.
It's not an automatic removal. Yeah, people also really, really don't understand that about the law.
And you know what? If you want to get that changed, tell your legislators that anybody who's convicted of a drug charge should have an automatic removal of their children.
yeah.
We
if that's
definitely
what you
would
think.
have. We're just, and also when you make that recommendation, can you also see if you can get about 300,000 more
Right.
foster parents?
Yep, willing to take these children
Right.
and provide care for them. And also be ready for your taxes to increase to pay for all that too.
And if you're fine with that, I support you, and I think you should make those
Yes,
changes,
right.
legislators. Like, if we had all the services in the world to protect children, if every possible, but don't forget
beautiful.
too, parenting is a fundamental right in the United States.
Yes.
It is a constitutional right that you have to parent, and there have to be really valid reasons and policies and procedures in place to take that right away from you.
Yeah. And you know what I think bothers me the most? Because we sit here and say, hey, we need more funding for this. We need more funding than that. We freaking need more accountability for parents that are abusing their damn children.
Or other people's children.
Yes. Yes. Like, that is what, like, you should automatically be in prison. I don't care. Like, how about we tax the system that way, and maybe less people would be willing to just be so blasé about the way they take care of their damn children.
Look at you assuming we have room in our nation's prisons,
I know we don't.
In our local jails.
They're just like foster care homes. We don't.
Let all the potheads out.
We have.
Oh, then there should be
They're
more
all
room.
out. They're all out. They're wandering around. You can smell them all over the county.
There
They're
should be
all out.
More room for the child abusers.
Yes, I always will find room if somebody is legally convicted of child abuse, but we have to get there first.
I know. You're
This
absolutely
case never
right.
got there.
Nope.
Until after a baby died.
Yep.
So this is it's my trigger alert at this point, because I'm sitting here agreeing with the legal and the policy aspects of this system, but at the same time hating that is the case because that's what happened in this to this little beautiful baby girl.
Yep. So to further fuel the media fire here, you guys, Christy Phipps Perez was not criminally charged in connection with her daughter's death.
That doesn't surprise me.
I know, but it's a decision that's been heavily criticized by some advocates and of course, the family members. I mean, of course, all of October's paternal side of her family is going to feel this way. They argue that she would have known what was happening in such a small home, and I do not disagree with that. I understand. She claimed she didn't. It was a 300 square foot home. She absolutely knew abuse was happening. But remember, y'all, the burden for the state is proof of that.
Beyond a reasonable doubt for a criminal case. Probable cause to charge and probable cause to get it through on a felony case. If she would have been charged with anything, it's possible she could have been charged with some type of a neglect.
Yes, failure to protect.
Which doesn't even really exist in those terms in the state of Michigan, but a lower form of child abuse.
Yes. And quite frankly, y'all, like I'm sure she was placed on Montana's child abuse registry. Okay?
Right.
What that means, that's not criminal. No. What that means is she can't work with other people's children.
At the lunchroom at a school.
She can't. Right. She can't work with children anymore. It doesn't mean that she can't continue to have her own children and have them be in her care.
And it's not an automatic removal in most states now.
It's not. So no, she wasn't criminally charged, but she, I'm sure she was put on their abuse registry.
I don't know if I agree with that, but I would have to know as a prosecutor in that state what all the possible charges were to see if it fit in any of them, and it may not.
Right.
Like, people get confused in Michigan. They're like, charge them with child neglect. Well, that's not a charge.
Right.
There's no crime of child neglect. You can petition on a neglect and abuse case. They're called NA cases in the family division of the circuit court. Our probate court handles those on assignment here. And you might have a child abuse charge where a child was like unintentionally hurt or something like that. And we have a number. There's child abuse first, second, third, and fourth degree. But none of those are neglect. There's certain aspects of a number of those charges where injury was actually caused, or that the action was so egregious, there was a negligent act that was so egregious that it led to some type of harm. But then you have to show how she was negligent.
Right. Well, and remember, she wasn't home.
Right.
She was she was not responsible for her care during the incident that resulted in her death. But I agree. I understand the fury here. I understand the family. I think 100% she knew that her living together partner was a piece of shit.
She was responsible for leaving her child with him.
She was. She 100% was. But that burden of proof, to be able to prove it for this. And quite frankly, it's a daily occurrence for Megan, Jason, and I in our current work to be lied to. We are lied to all the time.
Every day.
And every day. So unless we have proof of that, we can't act. We know when we're being lied to, by the way. I truly, sometimes it's so stupid that it's like, you really think I'm going to believe that? But whatever. Yeah. So the fact that she arrived home, she found her child unresponsive, and then called 911, saved her from the criminal charges. So
I'm sure that there were things done since he was charged, like subpoenaing his phone records and potential text messages and things like that to see if he had tried to contact her or anything like that. So they're going to know those things that may not necessarily have been disclosed.
Sure. Yes. And this is where the story kind of splits into two tracks. We have the legal case against Hyslop, and then we have the moral questions about everyone else who had power in October's life, like her mom, Child Protective Services, and the broader system. But in 2012, the case against David Hyslop went to trial in Montana. Prosecutors argued that he had repeatedly abused October, culminating in the fatal injuries that led to her death. Medical testimony and evidence of prior injuries supported the conclusion that this was not a single incident but a pattern. The jury, because of course he pled not guilty.
Right, he wasn't going to plead to anything.
The jury found him guilty of deliberate homicide.
Okay, which is basically like, I want to say first degree, but that would require, is that their version of premeditation?
His sentence was 100 years in the Montana State Prison with no possibility of parole.
Well, I do
which
like
I've
how
never
they sentenced
seen
there.
Never seen happen in Michigan, so I am giving a golf clap to Montana.
Yeah. Well,
I'm surprised it's Montana. I'm surprised they didn't hang him.
Well, they might not have the death penalty. I'd have to research that. But.
Oh, yep.
A lot of states, and this is something that's come up recently, but the death penalty is only on the book for certain life offenses, like again, homicide. So he would qualify for that. But some like child abuse first degree, which is child abuse causing, which is when a child dies, and it could be other situations, but dies too. Doesn't necessarily has life or any term of years. It wouldn't necessarily be a death penalty case. And again, in Michigan, we don't have that.
Right.
So.
He has actually appealed twice, but he has lost both so far, and his original conviction of a 100-year sentence is still intact.
Okay. And my guess is when he appealed, it was on a sentencing decision. He was hoping that, not necessarily for a new trial, but hoping to be sent back so he could be resentenced.
Oh, he did do. He sought
he
post-conviction relief.
Yeah, that's that's because he disagreed with the sentencing.
Yes. Yep.
When was he sentenced?
2012. Yeah. So
he's got a ways to go.
A little bit for his 100 years. If he's going to live to 129, then he'll be free again. Yeah.
And in the meantime, October's dad and the paternal grandparents are still never going to get over the fact that mom is here and she hasn't been charged.
Absolutely.
And I don't want to minimize their grief or the blame that they've placed on there because I think it's all valid.
It is, especially for April, who repeatedly contacted authorities with concerns. Her father being deployed in Afghanistan, this poor man.
Serving our country
with concerns about his daughter's safety, and wrote, but it was... it just wasn't fast enough. I don't know in those 20 days how those letters that he wrote, how they were processed. Were they being looked into? I don't have that information because, unfortunately, her death happens before anything could have been, done about that.
Well, and that's fair if they found out about these things and then her death happened so quickly. Because I was pretty quick to say, well, the defense attorney that they could have filed something for custody or even emergency custody. But if that time frame was so short, they may not have even had time to get the papers prepared to request a change in custody.
It was the letter was dated November. Oh my gosh, sorry, lots of months here.
Yeah,
June 3rd. This incident happened June 23rd.
Okay, I retract my earlier statement then.
20 days.
I don't think that there was time to get things done dealing with a dad who was in active duty service and trying to get his communicate with him.
And I'm sure not readily available all the time,
correct.
Right?
Yeah.
So, yes, and then advocacy pieces and documentary projects, have argued that October's death was in part murder by CPS, not in the literal sense, but in the sense that repeated warnings were not acted on with urgency that they deserved. And so I hope that we have helped illuminate a little bit for you guys as to why that might have been. I will tell you, all caseworkers in this case were placed on a temporary administrative leave while things were investigated, which is standard. This does happen, and it's investigated by an outside agency.
They had to make sure they followed protocol.
Yep, that they followed their policies, that they, were appropriately documenting all the information that they had. And there hasn't been anything that has come of that. So that tells me that the investigation probably showed that, like it or not, the actual policies and laws were followed. And remember, a lot of laws are written to be reactive instead of proactive.
They are.
And the child protection law is one of them. It really, really is.
There are some proactive pieces in there now, but it's because they're also written in such a way that they are still protecting due process. And we are an
and you all will
adversarial
want,
system.
you guys would want the due process protection. As parents, if any of you guys are fur parents or human parents or anything, ask yourself, do I think the government should be able to just come in and tell me exactly how I'm supposed to raise my children? I think a lot of you would say no, probably not.
Or take my child because she broke her wrist and it's a buckle fracture, so therefore it could possibly be child abuse. But it also could possibly be not.
It could be an accident.
I wish things were done differently and workers made different decisions in this case?
Absolutely.
Yes, I do. Do
Me
I
too.
think they violated the law, policy, or procedure? No, I do not.
And also, do I see why the parents, why October's family members are so devastated and angry
100%.
and want to see change? Absolutely. Yes.
I can even understand why they would think each individual CPS worker is culpable for for this death. But this is sometimes can be misplaced just in terms of how the government has decided to work, right? Or how the law has decided to work, and it worked against them in this case.
I also want to say, look at us looking at this case in a narrowed scope, because hindsight is always 20/20. We need to consider the massive amounts of complaints that CPS receives in a year. The vast majority are unsubstantiated because people will make complaints simply to be vindictive or because they don't like how someone else is living their life. If the laws were written totally strict, then it would cause issues infringing on people's constitutional rights.
Yeah, you can't have a strict liability neglect and abuse statute.
No, it's a very delicate balance that's not an easy tightrope to walk at all. However, I want to tell you some positive news. Out of this tragedy, something new emerged in Great Falls. It's called Toby's House Crisis Nursery, named in honor, of course, of October Toby Perez. The nursery was created as a safe place for children whose caregivers are in crisis and need short-term voluntary care. So Toby's house provides free temporary care for children when there isn't a safe place for a child to stay, while a caregiver resolves a personal issue, like maybe cleaning their home.
Yes, I love this.
When a caregiver is overwhelmed, struggling with stress, mental health, or substance use, and fears they might lose control. When there's a medical emergency and a caregiver needs immediate help with childcare. When foster parents need respite or families are facing short-term crisis that could put children at risk. So the idea is simple but powerful, and it gives caregivers a place to turn before a situation escalates into a neglect or abuse.
Was the family responsible for making this happen?
I don't know if I don't have
Or
the
in
information
support?
if it was. Oh yes, they were huge advocates of
Then
it. Yes.
Thank you for doing something positive with your anger, because I've always said I get the most frustrated when people want to come in and completely complain about the system but don't have an idea as to how to solve the problem.
Yeah.
And what's maybe a little bit bittersweet about this is, even though they're upset, and rightfully so, with policy, procedure, with CPS, with the state, they literally just created a service that they will use and refer to.
Yes.
Like CPS will have cases where you have an overwhelmed parent, and now they're going to refer to this and say, this safe house exists, this safe daycare that's named after beautiful Toby. And if you are stressed or you're having a crisis, we will refer you to them and give the number. So I don't know that they intended to have that effect, but they really did something positive in honor of this beautiful little girl.
Oh, Great Falls was very, very invested in this case. Absolutely. And you might not live there. You may have never heard of October before today, but there are children like her in every community.
Yes.
Kids where safety depends on whether adults notice, speak up, and are taken seriously. So this case highlights the importance of listening to caregivers who raise concerns, like grandparents, non-custodial parents, neighbors, supporting crisis services that give families somewhere to turn before things spiral, and advocating for stronger state resources like the child protective systems so that repeated warnings don't get lost in bureaucracy, right?
Yeah.
So,
Well, and I'm going to encourage everybody out there, too, that if you see something that doesn't feel right, that looks like it might be abuse or neglect or doesn't seem right, call the anonymous hotline for your state for CPS. You may not feel like it'll make a difference, but I can tell you that if central intake like ours has multiple complaints coming in, multiple people calling, it's definitely going to rise up the ropes in the level for investigation.
Yes.
Like if there were multiple complaints that were called in on that case and just not one like anonymous person each time, it may have tipped the scale in a different way.
mm-hmm. Yep, I agree. Thanks again, Ellen, for this very important case suggestion. I can't say as though I loved. Did we not shake our gree-gree?
No.
Oh, well, let's shake it at the end.
Okay.
We still shook it.
It's
All
fine.
right, it's fine. But yeah, I did. I can't say that I super loved researching this, and
It
it
was
felt a lot
important.
like work, but it was very, very
It was
important. So
important.
thank you so much. And I'm going to brain bath us on a little bit of a different note.
Okay.
One of our Patreons has actually sent this a couple of times, and this is just the right moment to read this. It's an article that just constantly has, it's good news stories from sunnyskies.com.
Did Chris send this?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And I just, it's something that you can turn to all the time. They update it all the time. But I'm going to pick one story from it today. We will come back to it on other cases that are just really hit just a little too close to home for us, and we need uplifting. But this is from February 24th, 2026. That is today, the day we are recording this story. This happened today. Football game stops as player performs CPR on seagull struck by ball.
Oh, my God.
A football game in Istanbul, which this would be soccer for us Americans, took an unforgettable turn when the match suddenly stopped due to injury, not for a player, but to save the life of a seagull. According to reporting by, Turkey Today, the rare incident happened during the first amateur league playoff final in a very, very long named community that I will not even try.
In a Turkish community.
In a
Near
Turkish.
Istanbul.
Yes. The match, I cannot even read those names as well. Listen, 22 minutes in, something completely unexpected happened. The goalkeeper launched the ball away from his penalty area. Mid-flight, the ball struck a seagull that had been flying overhead, and the bird fell to the ground. The team captain, Captain Catan, was the first to reach the bird. Recognizing that the seagull appeared unresponsive and unable to breathe, he didn't hesitate. His instinct, perform CPR.
Beak to mouth.
Beak to mouth.
How do you do CPR on a
Those
bird?
are dirty birds.
Well, they
Seagulls are
they
dirty.
explain
They're
it.
dirty.
They're flying rats.
They are.
Catan administered chest compressions for about 2 minutes. As he continued, he
Just
began
like
to see
squeezing it.
movement. He began to see movement return to the bird's legs and eyes, and gradually the seagull started responding again. So, water was brought over, and the revived bird was carefully carried to the sideline and handed to medical staff present at the match. So
That is
they
adorable.
saved his life.
At least that bird lived.
Because-
They also
Like,
lost the championship, just so
Oh,
you know.
no.
Like, they saved the life, but they lost the championship. And it's okay. I think they still won
Yeah.
In
in a
life.
way.
They won in
did.
life.
That bird was luckier than, you probably don't remember, you're young. But do you remember Randy Johnson, the pitcher?
Yeah.
The
I
big
do
unit?
know of this.
So
yeah.
this was probably
That was
25
a
years
seagull
ago.
too, wasn't it?
I think it was a pigeon
Oh,
or
it was a pigeon.
dove,
It was a pigeon.
because it flew. Randy Johnson was a pitcher for Seattle or
Mm-hmm.
Arizona at the time. They called him a big unit because he was like 6'10".
Yeah, that's why.
And he had probably. And he had like 110 mile per hour fastball. And he threw a freaking fastball, and a bird flew between the pitching mound and the batter and just exploded.
There was
I've
no
seen photos.
Like,
There was
it's
no
like
resuscitation effort that could have
But so
occurred.
this bird in Istanbul was much luckier to get
It
hit by a
was.
soccer ball.
Soccer
Yeah.
ball.
Just
and then
mass.
was revived.
So
Isn't
hilarious.
that uplifting?
I don't know that there are some communities where they wouldn't just take the bird and toss it over the fence.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, PETA.
It was probably knocked unconscious.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I don't think he restarted
Needed
his
it.
heart.
He might have. He might have.
I mean,
and he wasn't
I don't
doing
know
beak
enough
to
about
mouth.
bird anatomy.
He was doing compression.
He was just compression, no beak to mouth.
Okay.
Yep, just
All right.
compression.
Squeezing
So,
the bird and see if it
there's
comes
that.
back to life.
Oh my God. Well, thank you. That was wholesome.
Yes, I tried.
I like it.
tried. And thank you all so much for listening today and coming back week by week. Feel free to follow us on social media. We have really increased our social media presence. I'm trying to get better at that. We're doing lots of posts. So join us there, comment. And by the way, thank you to everybody who's been so sweet about commenting on how nice we all looked for our annual charity ball. So
Yeah,
that was
Charnell
very
and I
sweet.
feel like we both needed Botox.
Yes,
and Jason's over here going, well, I look great.
Yeah, the difference between men and women because
when you guys get
definitely-
old and get wrinkles, you just look hotter and more distinguished, and people are like, "Oh, she's aged."
And the lighting there was
it's
terrible.
not good.
And
we needed to
so-
carry these around with
We
us.
did.
And even this makes us look terrible in our opinions, but
Yeah.
at least I'm going to carry my
We
lighting
need
around with
we
me
need a light
everywhere.
ring to just follow with us for pictures. Just
Yeah,
on
I'm
our,
sorry
on
we
our
sound
phones.
super vain right now, but
Yeah, but
For
it
our-
was
for our
just nice.
video viewers.
Uh-huh.
I am wearing my jacket that we opened in our mail.
Yes.
It's my new favorite thing.
He is. He actually worked from his desk today all
I've
day
literally
in
been
his
wearing this for the
jacket.
last 6 hours.
Yep.
so ridiculous.
That he got in
I've
the,
been wearing mine all day too,
in the
Jason.
unclaimed mail episode. He has
Yeah.
been wearing it. Yep.
Maybe,
all day.
maybe next week I will wear the Amish.
I think you
blouse
should.
that I got.
That you got. Yes,
Yes.
the ladies' blouse. Please wear the ladies'
It's
blouse
very
next week.
conservative and appropriate for video.
It really is, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, so
All right. Well, we hope that you keep it curious.
and keep listening.
Until next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, used to chase the tears in a different kind of grind, helping little ones leaving our old selves behind. Charnell, Jason, Megan, a trio strong and true, but the system wore us out, needed something fresh and new. So we flipped the script, found the mic and the beat. From deep investigations to stories bittersweet. Prosecutor, the judge, that's Megan on the mic. Charnell digs the dirt, makes sure the facts are right. Crime curious, yeah, that's the name we claim. Shaking our grief, fanning the curious flame. From global listeners to the brain bag we provide. Keep it curious, keep listening with nowhere to hide. Jason's got the wisdom and the jokes to make us smile. Keeps the energy flowing for every single mile. We dive into the dark where the mysteries reside, unraveling the truth with nowhere left to hide. Laws and evidence, Megan lays it down with grace, while Charnell's deep research sets the compelling pace. Crime curious, yeah, that's the name we claim. Shaking our grief, fanning the curious flame. From global listeners to the brain bag we provide. Keep it curious, keep listening, we know where to hide. Don't ask about the raccoons, some secrets we just keep. But every week we're digging secrets buried deep. For every mind that wonders, for every soul that seeks, we're here to break it down in our crime curious speaks. Crime curious, yeah, that's the name we claim. Shaking our grief, fanning the curious flame. From global listeners